Hello. So thank you for being here and staying so late this evening. First thing I want to say is I thought Anton and Irene were amazing, and I thought that was a phenomenal talk, and I wish I'd gone before them, but now I have to follow them, so that was a bad idea. So the other thing I want to do is thank Paula and Olga for inviting me here. They invited me maybe only a couple of months ago, and I thought, you know, I've never been to Warsaw, so this is kind of exciting. And they said, well, we're a couple of students. We just sort of started doing this a couple of years ago, a little conference. And then they told me there were going to be like 2,000 people here. So it's kind of remarkable what they've built here. And I'm, right from day one, I've been really impressed by how they've marketed the conference, did the little videos and the website. And just, I think this is one of the most impressive sort of new conferences I've been to ever, and I've been to many, many, many conferences and spoke at many, so congratulations to them. So you should, it's truly great. Okay, so my wife was the one who said, actually, we have to go to Warsaw. I really want to go to Poland. So we came out here on Wednesday, and we have been walking this whole city and visiting some amazing museums and restaurants and cafes and bars and all those things. And it's a phenomenal city, and it's a very exciting place to be. We've met some wonderful people. So we've kind of fallen in love with Warsaw. So thank you for hosting us and having us here. So partly to honor that, I've decided to do half of this talk in Polish. Part of it in Polish and part in English. So let's try this. Dobry wieczór. Okay. That's what Google said it sounds like, I think. So anyway, now back to English. Okay. So Pentagram is a really interesting company. It's been around for 45 years. A lot of people have heard of it. It's international. It started in London, blah, blah, blah. So what exactly is it? On the website, there's a paragraph, and it's Pentagram is the world's largest independent design consultancy. We think it is. We don't really know. We just wrote that. So the firm is owned and run by 21 partners, a group of friends, which is unusual. We're all leaders in their individual fields, so we think. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's break this down. This is an important bit. The firm is owned and run by 21 partners. So this firm is equally owned by 21 partners. And all the partners are designers. That's what makes this company pretty unusual. There's a little asterisk there because one of our relatively recent partners is Naresh Ramchandani in London. He comes from an advertising background as a copywriter and is involved in communications. He's as creative as any of the other designers who actually make things. He writes scripts. He works with all of us. So he is a designer in a looser sense, but up until Naresh joined, every one of us was either an architect, or a product designer, or a graphic designer, and we do lots of things. So we have no CEO, no chief technology officer, or chief financial officer, no chief marketing officer, no Cs. We're without Cs. We're only As and Bs. So we do have a chairman, but the chairman is not the boss of anyone. The chairman only decides where we're going to have our meeting this year, and that's about it. That's all they get to do. They might chair the meeting, make sure people sort of pay attention, but not really. No one listens to them. We design architecture, interiors, books, branding, identities, digital stuff, exhibitions, products, posters, websites. We do a lot of things, and that's really important to us too. We're not specialists. We refuse to be specialists. We think it makes life a lot more interesting. So what have we designed? A quick history lesson. About 4 years ago, we turned 40, and Naresh actually wrote this lovely script, and we put together this little movie. And everything in this movie, it's 2 minutes long, has been designed by Pentagram. Almost everything, just so it's clear. It's not immediately apparent. So you might see an airplane there, it wasn't designed by Pentagram. But you might see a train there, and it was designed by Pentagram. You might see a London taxi, some of the buildings, like it's a big museum for Harley Davidson, that was actually designed by Pentagram. So just wanted that to be clear at the beginning. So how do I make this movie?
The year is 1972. A child is born in a car on a petrol station forecourt. He develops unusually quickly. By the age of 1, he's walking. By 3, he's shaving. At 6, he picks up a pen and starts writing poems about tires. He's the most exciting young poet of his generation. His work makes headlines around the world. But a cutting review in an Italian newspaper pushes him into a deep depression. He seeks solace in long books, stereophonic music, train spotting, reasonably priced Japanese car spotting. He tries antidepressants. He tries paracetamol. Eventually, though, he's cured by the therapeutic power of blending. His life starts again. He lands a summer job, spell-checking electricity bills. He's the most exciting spell-checker of his generation. He's headhunted by a newspaper renowned for typographical errors and transforms its spell-checking operation. Suddenly, he's a someone. He's invited to exhibitions, to banquets, opening nights, catwalk shows and sporting spectaculars. He thinks he's made it. But then he meets a girl with radiant skin, browsing the P section at a record shop. By day, she's an architect with a love of violin concertos and punctuality. But by night, she's a wild child who leads the man into a life of trashed hotel rooms and sex in moving vehicles. She steals his heart, his money, his air miles. He's left with nothing. Sleeping in bus shelters, with only the pages of a topical magazine to keep him warm, the man turns to window cleaning. He cleans the windows of media HQs, sporting arenas, and jumbo jets. He's the most exciting window cleaner of his generation. He becomes wealthy again, shopping at the finest stores and eating the finest food. And yet, his heart remains broken. He turns to the internet to find love. Dates follow, with music lovers, art lovers, leather lovers, and monkey lovers. He's the most exciting internet dater of his generation. But it's a paint and performance coatings chemist who finally captures his heart. They conduct an affair in the great hotels of the world. He proposes, she accepts. Wedding plans begin. A venue is picked, champagne purchased, and readings chosen from Isaiah and Winfrey. It's a perfect day. On honeymoon in the Maldives, the man sees a small monkey killed by a falling coconut. Profoundly affected, he decides to give his time more generously to charity and paint pictures for old people in his community. The man who was a boy is happy. It's his 40th birthday. The man settles down in front of the computer with some own-label Chianti and a light snack to look at images from his past. He sees a good life. And, sipping his surprisingly delicious wine, the man wonders what lies ahead.
Okay, so that was our anniversary video. Thank you. Okay, so that was then. What do we do now? I'm not really going to tell you because it's on our website and you guys have the internet. But this is our homepage at the moment. So this gives you a sense of the range of what we do. Signage, motion, exhibitions, branding for fast food, for beverages, trains, lots of books. We love to do books. Leafs by Snoop, we do packaging for marijuana, if you like. Drugs, we do. Harry Potter franchises, a lot of culture, booze, more marijuana, look at that. Huge telecom companies like Verizon. Wine, universities, MIT, fashion, interiors, Shake Shack, exhibitions down there, Louboutin, 21st Century Fox, little movie there for an architect, some work for MoMA, the Windows logo, big stuff we do, and very small stuff we do. We really do stuff for lots of money, for really big corporations, and stuff for free, stuff for pennies. we do whatever we want. Royal Academy, Code Academy, silly movies, graphics for big American football teams, more wine, a lot of wine here, a lot of booze. I didn't realize that. Saks Fifth Avenue, some books we published, some weird movies, universities, blah, 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 blah. Some old projects like D&AD. Okay, so who is Pentagram? That's what we do. So when I got out of college, when I studied in college in the mid-'80s, got out of college in '88, I worshipped Pentagram. I thought they were really, whenever I looked through textbooks before the internet, I saw work and I liked it, and very often it was done by Pentagram. So to me, they were kind of like the Beatles, because each member of the band you knew. It wasn't just the lead singer or the lead guitarist. You didn't really know who the the Smiths, Johnny Marr, Morrissey, but you can't remember the drummer's name or the bassist's name. So these guys, everyone knows all four of the Beatles. So I always thought Pentagram was like that. Everyone was important and interesting, and they did different things. So it started actually in '62, 3 young, cool guys, Fletcher, Forbes, and Gill. And they were cool at the time. They were really hot, tiny agency. The big agency would come to them if they had a difficult or super creative problem. They'd come to them. And they were just sharing space. And that photograph apparently was shot by, I don't know if it's this photographer, but a photographer who shot the Beatles. So they kind of were the Beatles. They were cool and groovy. So then this guy, Theo Crosby, joins, an architect. The other 3 were graphic designers. Bob Gill leaves. He doesn't, complicated reasons, he doesn't want to work with a company with architects. It takes too long to do architecture. And then these 2 other guys join, Mervyn Kolansky and Ken Grange. And it becomes Pentagram. There are 5 of them. And there they are. Very cool still. And then this guy, John McConnell, joins. So this is, to me, the kind of key, pivotal moment of Pentagram that makes Pentagram different from almost every other design firm of its size. Imagine a company called Pentagram, which is quite well established and getting big clients like BP and Cunard. They're the hot shot of the time in the '60s, when there wasn't that many design firms around. So they really were becoming, very important agencies and growing. And they find this guy, John McConnell, who is a friend of theirs, who had this little studio and would draw type and things like that. And they asked him to join. And instead of doing what many traditional companies do when you grow, which is this kind of pyramid system, like, okay, we started it, it's our company, we want you because you're talented and you can bring your own little business, but you're below us, right? That's what most people do. Because why wouldn't you? You started it, you took the risk, it's your name on the door. Why would you suddenly bring someone in as an equal partner? But that's what they did. And the trouble with pyramids is, after a long time, and I'm not talking a few years, after many, many years, and you see this with some very interesting design firms, the top folks get older, they retire, whatever. Very often, they start to crumble because the people underneath who don't feel as loved as they feel they should be because they're doing just as much work as the partners or the owners, they start to kind of leave, or it just starts to sort of not remain as sharp as it is as a studio. So I've seen that, we've all seen that. Another thing that typically happens to businesses, they grow, they become very successful, they win lots of awards, and then they sell out, right? They sell to one of the big agencies like WPP or Omnicom. There are a few of them now that have owned many, many digital agencies or design firms, and they get bought out. So to me, and I was speaking to someone here yesterday, Mikhail, about this yesterday, who, someone I believe is talking tomorrow, has a really interesting software company that he's built himself. And I said, so you must have offers, right? People want to buy you out. And he said, yeah, I've been talking to people in California and Silicon Valley. And he said, but I don't want to do it because I'll lose control. So, and that's what happens. You get bought by an agency, by one of the huge conglomerates. And, to us at Pentagram, it's sort of like, being absorbed by the Death Star. So that's kind of what we feel about that. And what happens is people get bought, they stay there because they have a contract to stay for 3 years, 5 years, and then very often they leave and start their own thing again. So that's not going to happen at Pentagram, partly because it can't, because we're all equal owners. That's what I said at the beginning, we're all equal owners. So financially, they would have to pay us so much money, times 21 partners, to make that happen. So we're kind of sort of insured against that happening, because it makes no economic sense to pay the kind of money that it would take. So 77, Ron Heron, a really famous architect, joins. Hillman joins, he's an editorial designer, designed Nova. Theo Crosby moves to New York and starts a New York office, gets this guy, Peter Harrison, to join. So the New York office starts to build. Heron leaves, Pelham joins. Pelham leaves. Heinrichs, and Shakery join. That's San Francisco. The first woman. Brown and Manassi join. And so I'll just go through this quickly. Pirtle joins more in New York. This is important. Rushworth becomes a partner. So John Rushworth worked for Pentagram, became an associate, and started doing so much work and handling the jobs himself and working with the clients directly that they make him a partner from within. That's pretty unusual. It does happen, though. When I was just out of college in New York, Michael Beirut joined. He came from the Vignelli studio, pretty well known in New York. And then Peter Saville joined in England. And Peter Saville was one of my heroes in college. He designed all the New Order covers and Joy Division and the factory records. So very, very cool. So I thought that's kind of interesting, because some of these other guys were getting older, and that they brought in someone who was so sort of on the cutting edge, and remains on the cutting edge, actually. Peter Saville is a brilliant designer. Then in New York, an architect, Jim Bieber, and a record cover designer, Paula Scher, joins. She did books, but mostly famous for her record covers and posters. Okay, more people joining. Alan Fletcher leaves, one of the founders, he leaves. Peter Saville leaves. Doesn't work for everyone. This model, Pentagram, is not the right place for everyone. So you'll see people come, people go. Another associate from within, this time in the New York office, Michael Gericke, is promoted to partner. Oh, there's a spelling mistake there, sorry. Colin Forbes and Mervyn Kalansky leave, a couple of the original. Theo Crosby, one of the original partners, dies. Peter Harrison, Neil Shakery, David Pocknell leave. The last associate is promoted in the London office, Eustace Ola. He then, a couple of years later, goes off to start the Berlin office. Bob Bruner joins. He's a product designer. He joins the San Francisco office. He came from Apple. He's the guy who hired Johnny Ive. It's pretty cool. Lorenzo Apicella and Angus Hyland join. An architect and a book designer join in London. Ken Grange leaves, the product designer from the original 5. Abbott Miller joins in New York. April Greiman, Fernando Gutierrez, DJ Stout. DJ Stout joins in Austin, Texas. The Austin office was started because Lowell Williams was in the San Francisco office and he had a fight. So he was pissed off and he said, I'm quitting. I'm moving back to Texas, where he's from. And they said, you don't have to quit, just open a Texas office. And that's how Pentagram expands, by people having fights. Or deciding, like Eustace, he was originally from Germany, so he said, I want to live back in Germany, I want to bring up my family in Germany, in Berlin. So they said, all right, do that. So there isn't a big kind of strategy, like we need to conquer America, we need to go to the West Coast, we need to be in Asia. It's really just people around the table saying, I don't know, let's open a New York office. I've always wanted to live in New York, and that's how it happened. April Greiman doesn't stay long. She actually had an LA office for about a year, I think. Lisa Strausfeld joined, one of the first sort of really digitally focused partners we've had. William Russell joins, architect, brilliant architect. John McConnell, Woody Pirtle leave. A good year. I join. Very good year. With Dom Lipper and Harry Pierce. People leave. After I join, everyone leaves. So. Then 2 more people join. Bieber leaves. Strausfeld leaves. 3 women join. Very good. 2 in the New York office, 1 in London. London's first female partner. And then last year, the end of last year, Jody and Luke joined Pentagram. So you'll hear a little bit more about them in a minute. So this is Pentagram today. And we meet twice a year, once in the United States side of the Atlantic. It was mostly in the United States, can be in the Caribbean or occasionally South America. And then in May or June, we do the meeting in the Europe side. So mostly in Europe, occasionally we went to Marrakesh, which is not in Europe, it's in Africa. So this was last 5 months ago in Austin, Texas. So this is all 21 of us. Why is it called Pentagram? So they couldn't agree what to call the company when there were 5 of them, because there were too many names. So apparently Alan Fletcher was reading a book on witchcraft, and that's it. That's why it's called Pentagram, I think. That's what they say. But they were hippies. It was the early 70s. This is why there's this interesting business model we have. How does a business work? All right, I'm going to show a little video about... This is quite an old video, so there are people here who are no longer partners. There are people here who look older now, including me. But this tells you a bit about Pentagram in a kind of nice way, I think.
I usually describe Pentagram as having a kind of socialist capitalist model where partners manage their own teams and profit centers, and then we share profits equally.
What's great about Pentagram is somehow the structure has fixed it so that the people really are important. I mean, if you look at our letterhead, there are no slogans. It doesn't say, fine design since 1972. It doesn't say what our disciplines are. It doesn't say graphic design, architecture, digital design, product design. The only thing it says outside of the name Pentagram, the address, are the names of people.
Pentagram exists for the partners to do the work they want to make, the way they want to make it, and that's what the platform's all about. And you can use the resources, you can collaborate, you can use the shared intelligence, you can ignore it all.
I'm running a relatively small team, but I have this organization behind me that allows me to approach bigger clients, and that makes me visible to bigger clients, which is beautiful.
There's no managing partner, there's no home office, and those are questions we get a lot, like what would the home office think about this, or where's the head guy or something, and the answer is always no and none.
What is it, 5 offices and 18, 19 partners. Partners retire, new partners come into the mix, and it's a constant process of renewal.
If anyone ever asks, what's your 5-year plan or 10-year plan to Pentagram, well, the answer, in my view, is who's the next partner. That's, worrying about who the next partner is really what our business plan is about. Because if you get that right, everything else follows.
So this is a question we get a lot, because we share profits equally. So then it's usually followed with this question, because it's kind of unusual, right? There are lots of firms with partnerships, like law firms, but none of them do what we do, which is add up all the profits, hopefully there's profits at the end of the year, and split them equally. Even if someone made a loss that year and someone made $1 million, it all gets evened out. So this is unusual. So unusual that the Harvard Business Review have done a case study on this. And if you'd like to, you can go buy it for $5. Or if you'd like to, you could buy the same thing for $8.95. I have no idea why they're 2 different prices. But so it's kind of an interesting model. And it's something that has been going for now 44 years. So it's so unusual. We measure our profits. We look at our numbers like most businesses do, sort of every month, and then we meet properly to really look at stuff every 6 months and see how it's going. And at the end of the year, as I said, it's equally divided, but within each office. We don't share with London, London doesn't share with us. It's partly because it's incredibly complicated because of international currencies, and partly because the businesses are just different and the cost of living is different and things like that. For me, coming in, I didn't even have my own company when I came in. I worked for a magazine. I was a design director at New York Magazine. I came in, I had no clients. Actually, just as I was coming in, I won the redesign of Time magazine, and I had Paula Scher help me do this to win this project, and I did it. So I had one client. So after a couple of years, you become what's called a full partner. The first couple of years is really just a kind of trial period. But after a couple of years, I was sharing equally with Paula Scher and Michael Beirut and Jim Bieber and Michael Gericke and Lisa Strausfeld and Abbott Miller, people who've had businesses for years, decades, big, healthy businesses doing architectural projects, signage for airports, some of the big projects, Citibank. Can you imagine how much profit doing the identity for Citibank would make? So I was a little magazine designer. Done a few other things along the way, but essentially that's what I did. So great news for me, right? I get to share. So the interesting thing is, this chart again, which used to be called in some of the partners meetings, it used to be called the penis chart for obvious reasons. So if you're sitting in a meeting with these folks who you respect, like, your friends, and their penis is longer than yours, you feel bad. Everyone in the room wants to have the longest penis. You know that feeling, right? So what does this mean? So it's interesting that people who I talk to say, you know, I went in there, very relatively young designer with a small business, and I got to share profits with these big guys, and they're like, that's fantastic, you're so lucky. Actually, you feel really bad about it. And so it motivates you. It motivates you to get more business and work harder and do all that. It's a real motivator. So the other thing it does, which is really nice about this system, is that because no one's going to get more than anyone else at the end of the year, we're motivated to help each other. So if someone's not busy and someone's too busy, they can pass work along, they can share clients, they can win the project and sort of together and then kind of pass the work on to you. So it's a very, very interesting system. So we're always competitive with each other. Everyone wants to have the biggest number, but at the same time, we really all want to be as close as possible to each other. And it doesn't happen every year. Sometimes people go several years and not do very well. But over the long run, the idea is, the concept is, when you're having a bad year, someone else can help you. When they're having a bad year, you can help them. It's quite remarkable. But it's not just all about money. That's the interesting thing. When someone has, there are some people, some partners who can consistently make more money, and you think, so why don't they just leave? They can have their own company, they can keep all their profit instead of sharing it. Okay, so really, it's not all about money. So what else is it about? Reputation, prestige. So I'm a little magazine designer, but I get to do work on international brands. This doesn't pay as much as Citibank, I promise you, but it pays well enough. But it's Time magazine or Stern magazine. So it's good for the company to have that on their website. And they respect it, and they think it's an important client, important work, so sure. Paula Scher has been doing this work for the Public Theater for maybe 18 years, I think. It's a big part of New York City, the culture of New York City, the Public Theater. She's done this for free for 18 years because it's important. So it's not about money. It's not about you have to take that project because it's going to make more money. We turn down projects that make more money. We don't care because it's important for us to do other things. Of course, we do have to make money. Long-term thinking. Okay, this was a project Paula did for Shake Shack. This brand started, I'm not sure if they have Shake Shack over here yet. I'm sure it's coming. This brand started as literally a little, almost like a food truck in Madison Square Park, done by a great chef, Danny Meyer. And as a favor, Paula did the graphics for this. Shake Shack is now in airports around the world. It's in Dubai, it's in Europe, it's in London, it's several in New York, it's all across the States. The company went public last year. So you never know where a project's going to go. So it's not all about money every year. Okay, what else? Long-term careers. Okay, architects. Architecture is really difficult. We really want to have architects as part of our group, as part of the partnership. But the career of an architect is really different from a graphic designer. You can be very successful very quickly as a graphic designer. You can be 30 and be winning all the major awards. You can be getting huge clients. As an architect, it's less typical. To give you an example, Zaha Hadid, who died a couple of weeks ago, considered mid-career, right? It's tragic that she died. She was a brilliant architect. She was 65. Lord Norman Foster is 80, I think. Rem Koolhaas from OMA, kind of edgy, younger, sort of starchitect, 71. Frank Gehry, 86. So how do you that's the sort of trajectory of an architect. So at Pentagram, we're trying to figure out how architects can stay and develop their careers and stay at Pentagram. So it's complicated, but that matters to us tremendously. Socially minded work. So Harry Pierce has been doing this non-profit called Witness, was started by Peter Gabriel in the 90s. He's been doing that for free, obviously, forever, since the beginning. Being part of the community is important to us. So some of the partners, Dominic Lipper in London has been doing the identity work for the London Design Festival for about 10 years. It's important for us to be part of the design community, and we've been doing October for 6 years. This is a sort of festival of architecture in the month of October in New York City. My team's been doing that. We're on our 6th version of that. What else? Writing. We publish a lot. Michael Beirut, he writes a lot other places as well. He's always interviewed in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. Abbott Miller, a really brilliant writer. DJ Stout in Texas just published his book. Other things we like. Paula Scher, she paints maps. She just had a big show at a prestigious New York City gallery, which is phenomenal. These things are huge. They take hours to paint. Marina Willard in the London office has just got a Kickstarter project funded a couple of months ago. A story about her family, actually. I think her grandfather was one of the 12 Jewish families to survive the Nazi occupations in Prague. So she's got a great Brazilian cinematographer to work with her on that. So that's interesting. It's not going to make us lots of money, but we want it to happen, obviously. Teaching, moderating, speaking, that's important to us. The office culture, we have a lot of parties. We host events. We publish books. From the early 70s, mid-70s, John McConnell started this thing called Pentagram Papers. I think we've now published 46 of them. And they're just about many different things, whatever the partner decides they want to publish. It could be a collection of photographs, it could be stories, it could be about typography. It's always design-related. It's not about promotion at all. They get given out as gifts to friends. We hang flags. This is our New York office. This is a flag to introduce Eddie Opara when he was a new partner. So the partnership culture. As I said, we meet twice a year. They're called the IPCs, the International Policy Committee, which is a terrible name. So this was a book that was self-published by Pentagram. There were these pictures taken by an amazing photographer in London, Phil Sayer. And this is what I thought these meetings were like. And actually they are. There's a lot of sitting in conference rooms, going over figures and talking and presenting, a lot of debate, a lot of very serious analysis, looking at design and books. And then when I joined, I found out what really happens. Shopping, going out, eating, and stuff like that. So it's actually a way of building community, a way of meeting. There's a lot of serious, boring stuff, but there's a lot of just talking and hanging out with each other. It's really important that Pentagram retains this sort of idea of what it is in culture. So what's it like day to day? That was my week last week. We're really busy. We're always doing stuff. I'm sure it's like your day. So along the left in the New York office, this is what we call Partners Row. All the partners sit in desks like that. My desk is at the very end. No private offices. So that's part of our culture. We actually pass each other. Whenever we're there, we talk, we look at what's on each other's screens, etc. It's really, it's deliberately set up like that. Same in London. No one has a corner office. No one has a door to close. Our teams are just spread around the building. That's Emily with her team downstairs. Conference rooms, typical stuff. So people ask this question a lot. How do you choose a partner? Okay. So I'm just going to, this is really one of the most important things we do at these policy meetings. So I'm just going to play this bit again.
What's your 5-year plan or 10-year plan to Pentagram? Well, the answer, in my view, is who's the next partner. That's, worrying about who the next partner is really what our business plan is about. Because if you get that right, everything else follows.
So that was John Rushworth, one of the most senior partners now. He's been part of the company for a long time and was actually the first associate to be made a partner and was the youngest partner. I think he was in his early 30s, amazingly so. So it's really important. So 3 ways to become a partner. Either you have your own little business and we say, why don't you come and join us? Or you're working at another company and say, why don't you leave that company and become a partner? Very unusual. That happened to me, and it happened to DJ Stout, who was another magazine designer. But he'd been designing books, he'd been doing a lot of judging and speaking and talking and being part of the community. Same with me. And then you can be, like John, be promoted from within. Oh, that's form, typo again. Which one of my partners in London says, born in captivity, which is kind of funny. So who gets asked to be a partner? Only designers, apart from Naresh, which I talk about. He's a creative, but he's not technically a designer. People who design things we don't. It's always nice to have someone with a specialty. Emily Oberman came into the New York office. She had a lot of experience with motion graphics and doing title sequences for things like Saturday Night Live, if you've heard of that, and movies and things like that. People who have their own company, as I mentioned, usually a good idea. People who have their own company, except me and DJ, I said that already. People who have a reputation, people who have won awards, that's how you get to hear about people. People in their 30s, typically, because you're at this point where you've been running your own company for a few years, but you're not too big, and you're not too settled, you're still open to change. There are exceptions. Dom and Harry in London were really well established with a company called Lipper Pierce. Emily Oberman had a company called Number 17, but her and her partner split up, and so suddenly she was available. And so that leads to this point that we don't like to take a company with 2 or 3 partners and just take one. It doesn't seem right. We don't do that. So these two, so usually we're looking for single-person-owned companies, but Harry and Dom, they were 2 out of 3 partners. They'd already split up with their third partner, so they could come in. Luke and Jody, the new young brothers who have come in, they had their own company. People with ambition, obviously. It's stressful at Pentagram. You have to work really hard. You're competing, sort of competing, and sharing with people who are very successful. So it's not for the weak of heart. People who are financially successful, but not as much as you think. We've looked at people, we have brought in people as partners who actually had small businesses. They didn't have, compared to the profits that Pentagram were making, they had far, far lower profits. But we thought, with Pentagram's sort of help, the help of the Pentagram brand and the exposure that you get, and the network that we have, all of our partners together, we have a huge network, that these people are so talented that given the right opportunities, they could make as much money as they needed to make. And whether it would take 2 years or 5 years or 7 years, that's fine. So people who make things. We love people who actually make things. People who write, talk, and teach. People who are involved. DNA was actually founded partly by Alan Fletcher, where a lot of us are members of AIGA in New York, TDC, SPD, architecture stuff. People who you'd like to have dinner with. Sounds weird. There are a lot of people that we know and meet who maybe you think they'd be a good partner, but if they don't sort of fit well socially, we kind of don't want them to be in our team because we go away for days at a time in these kind of interesting places. And, you know, if you don't like the person, you don't want to be in business with them. Even if they make so much money, it doesn't matter. So who's not asked to be a partner? So people who are financially motivated above all else. We have comments like, why aren't you in, you know, Beijing? You could make so much money out there, or something like that. That's not what has motivated Pentagram. We love to make money, but it's not the reason why we do what we do. I think some of the partners could make a lot more money elsewhere if they went on their own, etc. But they want to be designing. They're not in it to, a bit like the previous presenters. It's not just about money. It's about your lifestyle. It's about your life as a designer, not people with cloaks. Paula Scher says this, don't want people with a cape. So she's referring to people with big egos. And at Pentagram, we have lots of big egos, but they're not so big that they have to be the #1 star in the room. So that's the challenge with Pentagram, especially if you've had your own company. I'll talk about this in a second. That suddenly you can be sort of under the bigger umbrella. Suddenly your name is not on the front door. So not people with cloaks, not Darth Vader. A lot of Star Wars references. Why become a partner? So people ask this question, if you do have your own company and you are successful, why become a partner? So here's an example of someone I worked with maybe 18 years ago, Abbott Miller, who's now a partner in New York. When I worked for him, he was kind of like Fletcher, Forbes, and Gill in London. He was winning many, many awards, super talented, super getting the best, really interesting projects, magazines, books, exhibitions, identities. This was an exhibition for Rolling Stone magazine, a traveling exhibition of all the covers. Very cool project. He took the logo and made it dimensional. This was 17 years ago. Very cool. 3 weeks ago, he just opened this exhibition, working with a partner in London, Will Russell. Together, they've done this exhibition, which is the Rolling Stones. So going from Rolling Stone magazine to the Rolling Stones. So they worked with and met with the Rolling Stones several times to do this mega exhibition that opened a couple of weeks ago in London at the Saatchi Gallery. It's then going to move to Chicago, I think, or New York. It's going to go around the world. So the point is, from going for a tiny exhibition to a mega sort of world-class exhibition, world traveling exhibition, is a reason to come to Pentagram. You're allowed, you're sort of empowered, you suddenly have the wherewithal to work on big projects, and big clients say, okay, I think Pentagram can do it. Even in reality, Abbott's team isn't very different from 18 years ago when I worked with him. There were 5, 6 of us. His team is now maybe 7 now in New York. But because he can work with Will's team in London, because he has the support of the whole company, he could do these really big projects. And a funny little story, Ron Wood, the drummer from the Rolling Stones, used to work as a graphic designer for Bob Gill at Fletcher, Forbes and Gill. And Bob Gill said to Ronnie Wood, I think you like drumming better than you like designing, so I think you should go and be a drummer. And they're still friends to this day, which is kind of a cool story. Okay, I got 5 minutes left. Okay, so a quick video. This was just released a couple of weeks ago. Design Week, the British design magazine, started doing these little mini documentaries, and they interviewed Jody and Luke, our 2 newest partners. And so this kind of is very relevant and very, very recent, which is good. So let me just play this.
I think our initial feeling when we were first asked to join Pentagram was probably shock above and beyond everything else. It really wasn't something that we ever expected to happen. Maybe after that initial feeling, we felt validated to a degree, because as a small studio, you're kind of working in a void, you're working in a small team of people, and apart from your immediate peers, you haven't got much to measure yourself against. And so even being asked in that first instance was a kind of a measure that we'd been on the right path and that we were doing the right things.
I think my first impressions when visiting the building, at least, were the same as most people's, which we kind of greeted by this kind of amazing sense of scale and the kind of the age of the building. It's a beautiful space, and it's also a very calm, kind of quiet space. At least on the ground floor, you're not really aware of the activity and the kind of the buzz of upstairs, and they are quite different spaces. You realise how upstairs is a really kind of busy, kind of really work-orientated space. So the kind of calmness of down here with the kind of the activity of upstairs work really well together. One of the most unique, amazing things about Pentagram is there's no kind of single head. All the partners kind of equally control and share the business organisation, and you feel that very much when you join, that when you come here. Nobody's really prepared anything for you, so it's kind of pretty DIY.
Each of the partners in the studio space upstairs has a table which are varying sizes according to the size of their team. So when we moved in, we packed up our old studio, moved everything in here, and we had a great table space, a bit of wall space and some shelves ready for us moving in. So in that sense, it was pretty easy to get set up here. In terms of facilities, they're everything that any designer could wish for, really. We've got a workshop downstairs which is fully kitted out with lathes and then bandsaws, etc. We have the photo studio, and then upstairs there's a cutting board, it seems, for every 3 people or something, and lots of light boxes. There really is everything that we can possibly need here to do to be creative, to be experimental, and to do all the work that we need to, which compared to our old studio is amazing, because previously all we had was a bag of tools in the corner and an A3 laser printer. So it's a luxury situation in terms of facilities.
It doesn't feel like one big company. It doesn't feel like it's a corporate business in any way, shape or form. It really feels like it's a collective of smaller studios with a shared vision-ish, and that feels really special. It feels very open. It feels very like anything could happen, and yeah, it just doesn't feel corporate, which I know doesn't maybe make sense because the building's so old and it feels quite formal, but it's kind of anything, yeah, but that, I think.
The thing we've really noticed is the culture of listening, and the fact that everybody's voice is heard in the Pentagram office, which from my small experience of working at other places isn't always the case, and I think it's really important that everybody gets listened to and everybody's voice is heard. Sharing space with the other partners is great. We have access to such a wealth of knowledge and information within the building that whether it's help in terms of pitches and proposals, or whether it's asking more detailed questions about what someone thinks about some designs that you're working on, there's a real collaborative, shared working atmosphere amongst all of the partners. So we feel incredibly lucky having access to that.
I suppose some of the subtleties and the nuances of how the space functions and how the people use the space will kind of emerge, and at the moment it feels like a very work-orientated space, a very kind of calm space, a very thoughtful space. I just really appreciate that. I really appreciate the headspace that I have when I'm here, and that feels quite special, and I'm aware of that every day, that I can think.
So the interesting thing that I think you can get from that is that the model of Pentagram is allowing the partners to still design and not do business. So this is a quote from an essay. Alan Fletcher helped to establish a model of combining commercial partnership with creative independence. So strength in numbers. This is my team in New York. I've got 7 partners to bounce ideas off and to get advice from. I've got 13 others around the world, and I do send them emails saying, can you help with this? It's because we know each other as friends through these meetings. A full-time accountancy staff of 4. 2 full-time IT staff, a super, which looks after the building, 2 chefs. We have lunch for our staff 3 days a week. In London, it's 5 days a week. 3 people on the front desk. Tracy. So Tracy has been with Michael Beirut. She's about to retire. She's been with Michael Beirut for about 25 years. And we have questions about signage, complicated things that we don't really know about on my team. We haven't done a lot of signage. We literally go down and say, what does Tracy think? She can save us days of research. So basically, my team is now 9 people, but I have the resources of a huge, huge, large firm, which is incredible. Is it perfect? No. Long-term planning is challenging. We go to these meetings and we have ideas, and then we go back to our offices and we get sucked into the day-to-day of actually running our business. That's a good thing about having a CEO, because they can remove themselves and think about the big picture. We don't have that. Product development. Eddie Opara came from a small studio called the Map Office, which he started. He developed his own software programs, a CMS system. It was brilliant. It's hard to do it in Pentagram, and so we're trying to figure that out, how we can make that happen. It's hard to do it because you're looking at your numbers every 6 months and every year, and things like that take longer to develop and require a level of risk. There are a lot of cooks. Like, can you imagine 21 partners? If you've ever worked for a large architecture firm as a designer, which we do, we work for a lot of architects. If you're redesigning their website or their identity, it's a nightmare, trust me. Eddie had to redesign our website. It took 3 years, partly because there are too many damn cooks. Everyone has an opinion. And then the exit strategy. People work at Pentagram, they give their life to Pentagram. Pentagram is their life. And then how do you leave? It's kind of complicated. And sometimes you might not want to work as hard or as long, or you might want to do other things. And yet every month you're looking at that chart. Every year, every 6 months you're looking at that chart. So that's something we're figuring out now. But all in all, it's a pretty great company. So that's Jankovic.